Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining this press conference by the Rail Freight Forward Coalition. My name is Sigrid Nikuta, and I'm the CEO of DB Cargo in Germany and the chairwoman of Rail Freight Forward. Rail Freight Forward is the European coalition of rail freight companies committed to greening the transport sector and improving international freight transports. Joining me are my colleagues Sabrina De Filippis of Mercitalia Logistics from Italy, Clemens First of ÖBB Rail Cargo Group in Austria, Frédéric Delon of SNCF Rail Logistics Europe in France, and Dirk Stahl of BLS Cargo in Switzerland. And Dirk is also the chair of ERFA, which is an international reunion of private rail freight companies. Our moderator today is Paul Hegge. You may see him. Paul is working for Rail Freight Forward. Originally, he's from Belgium, from Lineas. We have invited you to this press conference to talk about the European Weights and Dimensions Directive, currently being revised in the European Parliament and the Council of Ministers of Europe. You may know that this is the first time that we have such a press conference, an international press conference. So for us, it's not very, it's not standard, but it's very, very unusually. So this event is an extraordinary situation for us. So there must be a really urgent reason for this. And there it is. Paul, you might share the slide. Still work in progress. I can see the slide there. The reason for this press conference is in 2023, the EU Commission has proposed a package of different legislative revisions. The package is called the Greening Freight Package, an initiative that we highly welcome. We are thankful to the Commission for its leadership in greening the freight transport sector, which is urgently needed. We all see and feel this. However, the currently proposed revision of the Weights and Dimension Directive threatens the positive results that can be achieved with the greening freight package. This directive incentivizes the use of road transport, even in cases where rail transport is the more efficient and environmentally friendly alternative. The stated intention of the Weights and Dimensions Directive is to green road freight transport by supporting electrification of trucks. And so we are all for the electrification of trucks. So it's a good idea. It would contribute greatly to the political climate goals for the sector. However, unfortunately, the revision far exceeds this goal. The current text of the revision will automatically allow unrestricted cross-border traffic of heavier and longer trucks. And not only for electric trucks, but it will also allow longer and heavier trucks for combustion engines. This is really unbelievable, but this is the truth. Heavier and longer trucks are free to cross as many borders within the EU as they wish. They can run unrestricted from Spain to Poland, for example. EU countries will have to let them onto their roads and bridges all over Europe. Long-distance freight transport on roads is not in line with the EU's Green Deal. It worsens the situation on our already crowded roads. And, very important, it overburdens critical road infrastructure such as bridges. Road transport is much more energy intensive than rail transport, and heavier trucks increase the danger from road accidents. So why is this directive such a bad idea? The directive only looks at the optimization of a single transport mode, the truck, but ignores the impact of the transport sector as a whole. We need emission-free trucks to advance the intermodal transport between road, rail, and inland shipping. But the current directive proposes the support of road transport at the loss of competitiveness of the other transport modes. The benefits of increased truck electrification from the directive are estimated at 10% emission savings, 10%. But this comes at the expense, and the expense is much higher, of much more energy efficient transport modes due to the reversal of modal split. On long distance traffics, rail transport is 7 times more energy efficient than road transport. So rail transport, 7 times more energy efficient than road transport. And the result of the directive is a big loss for the environment, energy efficiency, and safety in the EU. And that's the point where I want to hand over to my colleague, Sabrina from Mercitalia Logistic. So I hand over to Italy.
Good morning. Through this directive, we can definitely say goodbye to EU 2033 sustainability goals, because we will have a negative impact on the overall transport system, the road safety, plus 47% incidents involving heavy trucks, the road network, plus 1.50 maintenance cost, the CO2 emissions. The next, thank you. The use of heavier and longer road trucks for the long distance will reduce combined railroad transport and will cause a reverse modal shift. Therefore, 60% less railroad combined transport, 21% less unimodal door-to-door rail freight transport. We agree increase of weight for installation of batteries in electric trucks, but in this way we risk the end of the current incentives for combined road rail transport for 44 tons, the permission of giant or gigalines between border countries and throughout the European Union. For international transport, the 40-ton truck is today permitted in all countries of the EU. The directive wants to allow 44-ton trucks all across Europe if part of a combined transport operation. This means the end of the railroad combined transport, since interoperability has to obey to specific measures internationally confined. Gigalines in Europe. Today, gigaliners up to 6 tons and 30 meters are only allowed to circulate in the certain Scandinavian countries for the transport of wood, without possibility to cross European borders. This directive imposes the systematic authorization of cross-border traffic in member states with possibility to circulate in EU. And next slide. As Mercitalia Logistics, we strongly believe of the positive outcomes coming from railroad integration. But this directive will reverse the modal shift process, will clash with all European decarbonization goals, will be the opposite of every Green Deal goal, will generate 10 million more trucks on the roads, will produce the equivalent of over 6.6 million tons of CO2 more than today's volumes. I would like to remind you that each train can carry the equivalent of 30 trucks with important green, social and safety benefit. The rules must optimize intermodal transport, not favor one type of transport over the other. Thank you very much.
So I think we will hand over to Frédéric Delorme, to Paris.
Yes, from SNCF, good morning. So heavier trucks and gigaliners pose significant dangers to both car users and vulnerable road users such as pedestrians and cyclists. And the first reason is that overtaking long lorries takes much longer than normal lorry. The length of mega trucks or monster trucks could be up to 32 meters. It's almost double of a normal truck of existing one. That means that the time to overtake on a motorway or a road will be considerably increased, at least multiplied by 2 the time to overtake. While on some of them, of these roads, there are already 1 or 2 uninterrupted lines of trucks. This is absolutely a disaster for car drivers and citizens. But the greater risks also compared with normal trucks for normal roads users is when they are turning at junctions, roundabouts, and in parking areas. Also, these trucks will need longer clearance times at level crossings. And we know that level crossings are very dangerous, and there are a lot of fatalities due to level crossings. And this will pose in Europe an additional safety risks. Then, the last point is that the deaths in collisions involving heavy goods vehicles will more than double. The weight of a truck of 60 tons instead of 40 tons creates kinetic energy multiplied by 1.5. So it is proven that in the countries where these heavy trucks, monster trucks, are already operating in Europe, the accident with fatalities involving such trucks will be multiplied by 2 to 3 compared to the current situation, by 2 to 3 dead people. Even in USA, these trucks were banned. There is no mega trucks in USA, and yet USA is a land with open spaces and wide highways. So imagine this in our much narrower roads and highways in Europe. So now let's watch a short illustrative video demonstrating the impact of gigaliners on road safety.
Rolling through an intersection, it then wipes out a bus shelter, fences and trees, just stopping short of a house. The entire terrifying.
So this is the illustration of the consequence of the kinetic energy of such a truck and the power of such a truck to destroy, of course, houses, why not, but especially cars.
Thank you, Frederick, also for this video. I've never saw this. Clemens, it's your turn.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll come with two other aspects. The first one is impact on road infrastructure. And there is a long established law, which is the law of power 4, which links the axle weight to the damage done to road infrastructure. By the way, this law has not been postulated by railway companies, but by US highway authorities. And sort of if you do the numbers, and you can do it on a calculator pretty easy, and if you increase the axle weight by 10%, for example, by going from 40 tons to 44 tons, you increase road damages by 46%. You can play the numbers further with a 50% increase, leading then to a factor of 5 and more damage. By the way, you can also run the numbers backwards. And if you take the car then on the very left, right, then and you do the numbers, you arrive at the fact that if there were just cars and no trucks on the roads, right, the environmental effects like sun and rain would have a larger stress or wear on the pavement than the traffic. So basic message is long established rule, higher axle load dramatically damages infrastructure, and that translates then into rough estimates that we have done on the next page. You can see that this regulation would lead to extra maintenance cost for bridges and pavement of approximately 7 billion euros per annum. And that's just these specific cost positions. All the other cost positions that have been there in investments for bridges, 4 billion investment for tunnels, not estimated, parking's not estimated, and so on and so forth, right? So there is a huge bill when it comes to road infrastructure in addition to all the other topics. Yeah, but now you might say, and I'm a bit referring back to what Sigrid has said before, but now you might say, well, it's larger trucks, it's less CO2 emissions, and Sigrid has mentioned the 10% CO2 emissions that might be saved due to heavier trucks, which sounds a lot. On the next page, we would strongly argue that comparing CO2 emissions of a 40-ton truck and a 44-ton truck is nice, but is not the real question, right? The real question is, what is the comparison to the next best alternative? And the best alternative is rail transport. Sigrid has mentioned a factor 7 in terms of energy efficiency, which directly translates into less CO2 emissions, even more so that in many countries the traction electricity comes from renewable sources. So it's even more than a factor of 7 in terms of CO2, of less CO2. So our strong case would be, don't compare 40-ton trucks with 44-ton trucks, but compare 40 or 44, it doesn't really matter, ton trucks with combined transports, where you save up to 90% of CO2 emissions. And that's our strong case. And this is why we so strongly believe that this directive is well meant, but completely misses its aim. With that, I hand over to Dirk to Switzerland.
Mm-hmm. Yes, good afternoon. I would like to refer to the intermodal market. You know, the intermodal sector is the growth market for rail freight. And intermodal needs standardization, that's very important. And in that context, really to allow heavier trucks and gigaliners is very counterproductive, because gigaliners are not suitable for the pre and post road transport. So it's not really possible to use them on intermodal transport. Secondly, they complicate operations because of their size. They would not fit into combined terminals, for example. And so overall, next part is they are not, the trailers added here are not technically compatible with combined transport, so no standardization. And also the loading infrastructure is not suitable. That means gigaliners and intermodal transport, that does not fit. Come to the next chart. How can we make it possible? Because we want to combine rail freight but also for the last mile, also the trucks. It's very important. We have to ensure that trucks' weight and dimensions are compatible with combined transport. As I said, that we can put them on the trains. And the combined transport can then drive the development of zero emissions trucks. So it could be beneficial for both parts. And also the part that truck drivers are short. And you know, like we only need one train driver instead of 30 to 40 truck drivers is very much an advantage for even intermodal traffic. So overall intermodal traffic only the standardized trucks which fit into our system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, dear colleagues. Please let me summarize. We are not against road transport. Road transport companies are important partners to us, and we believe in the complementarity of transport modes. With a holistic view on the European transport sector, we believe that a win-win situation is possible. We have two clear proposals. First proposal, amend the current weights and dimensions directive to allow additional weight on trucks only specifically for batteries. So only if the truck has a battery, then it should be heavier. When batteries become smaller, the additional weight allowance must become smaller too. And allow cross-border traffics only for specific national flows. For example, Scandinavian long-distance transports, and allow it only if no alternatives are available. And the second proposal is the weights and dimensions and the combined transport directive must be revised together on the EU level because they belong together. So we have to discuss both regulations together. If these elements are not considered, the directive would be a mistake because it obstructs the goal of the EU Green Deal to double the share of rail freight from 18 to 30%. We are now at the end of the presentation part of this press conference. My colleagues and I are happy to take any questions you might have. I thank you for your attention, and I hand over to our moderator, Paul Hegge. It's up to you, Paul. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sigrid. For the time being, we have just checked the chat. There are no questions yet. There is a question for sending out the presentation, which we will make available on the website Rail Freight Forward and on other websites as well. So you'll be able to download the presentation later this afternoon. Is there any question from anyone? Yes, there is a question from Mr. Eric Renet from Le Soir, Belgian Press. What will happen if nothing changes? What do you expect to happen if nothing changes? Sigrid, we want to take that question?
Yeah, of course. If nothing in the regulation will change, then of course all the consequences we have seen here will be reality with all the negative effects. And that's why we propose so let's look at these both directives together. Let's have this holistic approach. Weight and dimension and combined traffic must be revised together on the firstly, and secondly, only allow heavier trucks if the battery is in, not anything else.
There's a question on how likely do you think that the directive would be amended? Clemens?
Sorry, my hand was still for the last question.
Okay.
Maybe let's do both, right? We've had a chart and we will send them out that clearly shows that we will have a shift from rail to road in the double digits, right? Low double digits for intermodal, high double digits for single wagon load. So what it means is more trucks on the road, less transport on rail, with all implications for CO2 emissions, other emissions, road safety, congestions, and so on and so forth. Now, since I jumped in at the wrong point in time, let me also give a shot at the second question. Yeah. I think, how high is the chance? We strongly hope for a large echo from this press conference, which then, in addition to other measures like speaking to the respective ministries and representatives in the European Parliament, will then lead to the approach that Sigrid has suggested. Mm-hmm. At the same time, really also a personal wish from my and our side that we get this echo also from this press conference to support the cause.
Yes, that's already a partial answer to the other question. Don't we have another tool to make political pressure before elections in May? I think we have tried the normal routes through the normal associations, talking to MEPs, talking to the Commission. But so far, this has been treated like a very technical directive that was only looked at from we increase the rate for trucks, so that means that there will be less CO2 and less trucks on the roads, but they didn't look at the whole impact on the whole transport sector. Yeah. And that's the point we wanted to make. So far, we hope that, the reason why we're having this press conference is really because we feel there has not been interest in general on this topic, and it has been dealt with just on a technical level, not on the in level of impact on society. Frederick, you want to comment on that?
Yes, I want to highlight that there is a very important milestone. It's on the 11th of March this year, very soon, next week. And the current parliament, not the future European Parliament, will decide and vote on that. Mm-hmm. So the election is important, but the most important is what will happen next week. And clearly we ask to stop this decision because the impact has not been correctly evaluated on all parameters, not only the consequence for rail freight, but also for accidents on roads, for the cost on roads, for all impacts on Europe. And this is more motivated by productivity of trucks, if we speak frankly, and not on Green Deal. So we have to stop this because the real reason of this proposal is the influence of road transport to increase the productivity. That's the main reason, not Green Deal. The impact has not been correctly evaluated. And this has to be decided on the 11th of March. So we all have to put pressure on that before the 11th of March to stop the process on the 11th of March.
Thank you, Frederick. There's also a question of, will this issue be resolved before the EU elections in June? It's a rather technical question. I can comment on that, saying that, like Frederick has mentioned, 11th of March is the most important decisions by the European Parliament when they take a position. And then the Council of Ministers has to take a position early June. And that decision is also extremely important for us. It's both these decisions that will decide whether it will go on or not. It will be the direction of which decision is taken by Europe will be decided by the beginning of June. So it's very important that this information is out now and that people realize what the consequences would be if the directive is not amended to according the requirements we have mentioned. Yeah, we get a nice suggestion here to do a European-wide survey of European citizens. Thanks for the suggestion.
Yeah.
Any other question?
So if we don't have any other questions, I think it's a point to finish, Paul. It is clear. Thank you. This is very helpful. Then we did our job. So as Paul already mentioned, this regulation is really technical and in parts really complicated. And that's why nobody is so in the details. And that's why we want to emphasize the consequences of this regulation, because the consequences will be very severe where you're not able to make your point in consultations. Even the member countries were not so clear about all the consequences, because of course we are all for the electrification of trucks, but the whole chain of consequences must be looked on, and that's why we think it's very important that we now show all these consequences and discuss about them, because for the infrastructure it doesn't matter if the truck is a battery or a combustion truck. It's simply heavier and all the consequences will be there. So thanks a lot for your attention. This was the first time that we had such an international press conference together. Thanks to all participants, to all journalists, and of course, thank you to the moderators and to my dear colleagues. And I hope that we together can change the world in this topic a bit. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again. And if you have any further questions, all information will be made available on the website of Rail Freight Forward later this afternoon. Thanks again.
Thank you, Paul.